I'm Susan Page, Washington Bureau Chief of USA Today, and this is Capitol Download. We're joined by Vic Gold. 50 years ago, he was an aide to Barry Goldwater in that 1964 presidential campaign. Thanks so much for being with us.
Good to be here.
You know, it was almost exactly 50 years ago today that Senator Goldwater clinched the Republican nomination with a narrow victory in the California primary, the last primary night of the series. At that point, the senator and those of you around him believe he had a realistic chance of defeating LBJ in November?
No. Least of all the senator. He had looked forward to running against Kennedy, against President Kennedy. But when President Kennedy was assassinated, the senator's feeling was that the country was not going to accept 3 presidents inside of 2 years. Nobody realistically expected us to win.
So why did he run?
To carry a message.
Ask Americans today about the 1964 presidential race. One of the things they would remember is the daisy ad. The ad that showed a little girl picking the petals off a daisy, counting up to 9, and then a nuclear countdown and a nuclear cloud.
Yes.
With a warning by LBJ that electing Goldwater would risk nuclear Armageddon.
Yes. Keep in mind that although it was pretty devastating, Governor Rockefeller had pretty much done a pretty good job of portraying the senator as a nuclear nut in the California primary. So and also I might not only Governor Rockefeller, but Governor Scranton of Pennsylvania during the primary periods, they had all called Senator Goldwater an extremist who, if he had his hand on the button, would get us into a war. It was rough and it was unfair, but it was a mean-spirited campaign from the standpoint of portraying Senator Goldwater as something he was not.
Do you think the ad worked?
I don't think there's any doubt that it fixed in people's minds the idea that the senator was that he could get us into war. At one time, he was advised, "Will you please not use the word nuclear ever again?" He said, "Well, you know, try to tell Goldwater what to say and what not to say." Rockefeller had said in an ad previously run in the California primary, Senator Goldwater could not get us into a war. President Goldwater could.
Election night 1964, an historic landslide. LBJ won 44 states. What was that night like?
I was the spokesman as the numbers were put up on the wall, and there wasn't much. We expected to lose. I remember about 10 days before the election, Paul called me over, and he said, "They want to know that if we're elected, would you want to be with the administration?" And I said, "This is a trick question. I mean, it's ridiculous." But we were all in it. I was in it because we believed in what Senator Goldwater was saying.
So an historic defeat, and yet Goldwater's candidacy that year had a big impact on the conservative movement, on the Republican Party. Talk about the impact that it had.
Goldwater Republicans at that time fell into a bad light in the party itself. Republicans walked wide of us at the time, but we had started something. But basically, that was the beginning of the movement when conservatives took control of the party.
And in fact, that campaign that year really launched Ronald Reagan as a political figure.
That was the greatest political speech of the thing.
Tell us about that speech.
A time to choose. It was the speech that Henry Salvatore, who was a California a backer, put up the money for a speech to be made by then Ronald Reagan. He wasn't governor. And he was a converted Democrat, and the speech was a time to choose. Now, he had been going around making that speech, working for the company, I think it was General Electric. So he made the speech, and there was a great, actually, dispute Well, that some people did not want the speech made in the campaign. So Goldwater said, "Well, let me see it." So they showed it to him, and he says, "I'm giving you directly. What the hell is wrong with that?" And he called Reagan. He said, "Yeah, great. Go ahead and make it." It electrified people. It did launch Ronald Reagan's political career.
2 years later, Reagan was elected governor of California, even though opponents derided him as just an actor. When you saw A Time to Choose, that famous Reagan speech in the Goldwater campaign, did you think this guy has something?
Oh yeah, I think anybody who was in politics and had a political eye said, "Wait a minute, this isn't going to stop you." This fellow, Ronald Reagan, had a way of delivering a message. Senator Goldwater was very blunt. He was charismatic, but he spoke very directly. Ronald Reagan spoke directly, but Ronald Reagan had a great ear for what to say and what not to say and how to say it. And at the same time, he came through as a person who, when he spoke, it was as if he's speaking directly to you. So anybody who saw that speech that night figured if Reagan didn't have it in his mind to run, we wanted him to run for something.
So in his day, Barry Goldwater was known as Mr. Conservative. Would he fit in today's Republican Party?
No. We considered ourselves libertarians. There's a difference between libertarianism and nihilism. For the present Republican Party, Tea Party crowd, they're nihilists. There is nothing positive that they argue. It's a caricature, really, of what Goldwater conservatism was about, in my opinion.
So let's talk about current events.
Mm-hmm.
Got a presidential election coming up in 2016. You've watched a lot of presidential politics. You were press secretary for Spiro Agnew. You worked for George H.W. Bush, the elder President Bush. Who do you think the Republicans will nominate in 2016? It
would be Jeb Bush. I want him nominated, and two, I believe he will be nominated. They can go wild for the Ted Cruzes and the Rand Pauls, all they want. But when it gets right down to it, I think Jeb has the best chance of winning.
So let's say you're right, Jeb Bush is nominated by the Republicans in 2016, and let's say what we think might well happens on the other side, and that is Hillary Clinton is nominated by the Democrats. Who wins another Bush-Clinton presidential race?
I can't make that bet, but I'll say this much. In my opinion, Jeb Bush, and I said it when he was younger, and when I worked for his father, Jeb Bush is the best political figure in the Bush family.
So a better candidate than his brother, George W.?
I think Jeb is a much better, has more genuine appeal.
And a better candidate than his father?
That's how I look. His father did get elected. Let Jeb get elected president, then I'll say he's as good as his father.
Vic Gold, thanks for joining us on Capitol
Thank you
Download.
for having me. Thank you.